It's Monday, November 15th, and it's our second episode of Cardboard Consultants. Aram here with Kendall and T. Edward T. Wright would be the formal name. I don't know what to call you. I feel like T's so informal when we're on air. I feel like I should be calling you Edward T. Wright, but that makes you sound like a published author with a moniker.
He is.
I am a published author, but that's
Oh,
indifferent.
you actually are a published. So it's
Yeah.
Edward T. Wright, Kendall McGee, two of my guys, owners of Wildcard Trading, and also contributors at justbaseball.com for the collectibles vertical, which we're going to get ramped up pretty soon here. I'm excited. And I have a lot of questions for you guys about the most recent checklists. I know that we're already looking forward to another drop soon, right? When is the next drop for the draft? Would that be within the next month or so?
It's December 12th, I believe.
December, yeah.
I know what I'm asking for Christmas because I love the draft class, and that's something we'll talk about more in the future weeks. But we're going to talk a little bit about the Chrome 2021 Chrome and 2021 Bowman Baseball, because while I do think that the checklists are a little bit light, still plenty of talent in there, a lot of fun to break those. And you guys are going to be doing a break soon. I already claimed the Rays spot, and we're going to talk generally because I claim the Rays spot because of Carlos Colmenares, who's going for a lot with the Rays. Obviously very risky and young. And that's more just because I've been able to see a bit more of him, but I understand that it's a lottery ticket there. But that kind of got me into the thought of talking about Luis Rodriguez and why he's going so much with the Dodgers. So we're going to discuss that a little bit. We're going to talk about what in the world I should do with my Jared Kelenic poll, the redemption that came in a couple weeks ago. Very excited about it. I like him as a player, but there's definitely some things to discuss there. And then we're going to talk a little bit about what we've been buying lately, because I know we've all been looking to scoop some cards up as the season's over. This is usually a good time to buy, as I know you guys always talk about. But let's start with tying in with the break that you guys have that we're going to have coming up here, which, by the way, we'll have the link in the description for that. So if you want to go check out the Facebook group that they have going on here to buy a spot in the break. Obviously, Rays is taken, but there's some other opportunities to buy some other spots. And we can talk about a little bit what people are targeting. We know that people are targeting Luis Rodriguez heavily, and Dodgers prospects are always highly coveted, and understandably so. But from the Luis Rodriguez standpoint, I get a lot of questions on this guy just on the Prospect podcast. We haven't seen anything. We really haven't. Even for me to get access to data or video or really anything whatsoever, it's super limited. His numbers at the complex league are not great, but it doesn't really matter because it's small sample size against competition that's really everyone's just working on something. So I'll start with UT. I know that it's the Dodgers effect a little bit, but this even seems crazier than anything I can remember in recent memory of a card getting just boosted so much without really seeing him play. Dominguez is one side of it, but you had the mythology of his physical stature. Luis Rodriguez is an athletic kid, but I mean, nobody really has seen that much. There's no way.
Yeah, I really just agree with you on that. We talked a little bit before we got started, and Luis Rodriguez has 240 plate appearances. His numbers aren't super great. I think he hit around 213. His ISO is around 151. He just doesn't seem like an overwhelmingly just incredible prospect. Of course, the point that you made, which I think is also spot on, is that even if his numbers were outstanding, it's still such a minimal amount of exposure that I don't really understand, or none of us really understand, why his cards are going at the price point they're at. I think right now what we're seeing is a huge gamble in terms of where people are buying Luis at. And I personally won't be investing in him for another year or so, when probably everything cools off and his price drops down considerably. So that's kind of where I'm at on him. But would love to hear your thoughts on that and Kendall's thoughts as well.
Yeah, I think you're right on the money here. It has nothing to do with not believing in Luis Rodriguez as a prospect, right? He very well could end up being a great player, but when I'm looking at what he's going for, I mean, even just the most recent sale right at the top here on eBay, you have a Bowman Chrome refractor that sold for $280 raw. mean, that's a lot of money. That's money that we were talking about. You can put into a really nice Alec Thomas card, or a really nice Corbin Carroll, even, or not that it has to be the D-backs, but JJ Bleday, who we're going to talk about a little bit later with the Arizona Fall League implications and how good he has been out there. It just seems to me that people are buying the idea, right? Because all of these Dodgers prospects balled out this year. You have Vargas who balled out. You have Pages who balled out. Every prospect for them has really hit well, especially the international guys. And I could go on and on. But at the same time, it's still an individual human being. And Kendall, at that kind of price point, do you feel like it can only go down, right? Like, what happens if he does come out next year and hits? The price he's already at kind of puts him in the price range of a top 50, top 40 prospect in baseball, roughly, right? If I'm not mistaken, maybe a little bit off of that. How much is he going to have to hit for that price to really jump any more from where it is?
Well, I think in Luis's favor, he's going to be a Dodger, or at least until he gets traded or something like that. And
Dodgers
so
prospect.
And so whether he hits really at all, he's going to have more inflation than some other players. But he's got the build. I mean, he's 6'2". He's young. So, he even has room to grow there. And he has potentially like soft 5-tool player ability from what I've read. But we haven't seen anything. He's in the complex league, and so I think it's like the Riley Green, Jason Dominguez prospect fatigues, thing that we talked about last week, where it's just like this guy may have a little bit to run here, but if I'm an investor here, and that's what we do here on this show, is we look at potential long plays to potentially make some cheddar, right? And so if I'm looking at long plays, I'm looking at X return. Yeah. I'm not looking at marginal return, and so even if it goes up, it can't get crazy. I was just talking to you earlier about how Wander Franco PSA 10 non-autoed first chrome is $200 right now. So it's cheaper than that refractor.
Yeah.
I'm putting my money in the solid Wander Franco right now.
No doubt. No doubt. What's odd about the Luis Rodriguez thing is go back and look at his last 2 months in terms of where his price point was. And his price point was actually, when he first hit the market in September, when Bowman Chrome kind of hit the stage, it was $300 for a raw, like a base Chrome auto, which is nutty.
Yeah. And that's a crazy thing, because I'm looking at like Andy Pages, and he's at $87, his most recent raw sale. That guy hit 30 jacks.
Give me 4 of those.
He hit 30 jacks in high A. And he's not that much older than him. He was 19 for most of the year. To me, it's nothing against Rodriguez. I'm just really interested in the psychology of rolling the dice. And the last thing I'll say on this, because again, I'm rooting for him to be a very good player, but even if he is, again, how much is that price going to run? How much of it is because it is a bit of a weaker checklist of lesser known, lesser established guys, that this is the name that everybody's buying in the breaks. And this is the name that when people are polling, they're excited about. And this is the name that out of the most recent product, they are going after, because there's not that many established guys, given the lack of 2020 season, given just where we're at in the hobby. They didn't really have that many new faces to put in. There weren't that many up and coming players who broke out because there was no 2020 season. So they had to dig deep into the international free agent market for some really young guys that don't usually get cards this early. How much of it is just the fact that he's one of the better players in a weak set? Does that really impact price in the short term?
Yeah, I think they're pretty much, the consumer is only relying on the Dodgers scouting department. They're basically relying on the fact that the Dodgers went out and got the best guy. Yeah. And so now there might be some truth to that. The Dodgers system has shown that they're willing to put great players through their farm system, and they're willing to cultivate that well. But it is a weak checklist. I would rather have a guy like Pineda on, like he's a lot cheaper from the A's, but at the same time has a lot of promise as well. And he's not even the cheapest. That's just the first guy that I thought of. But Aram, I do have a strange question.
Okay.
Explain. Okay. This is less card related. Obviously, me and T are card related guys, but I want to know from a scouting perspective, if Luis is in the complex league, is there anything that he could do at the complex league that would grab your attention? Or is it all just like, hey, he's getting reps?
He would have to So remember what Marco Luciano did with that 118-mile-an-hour home run
Yeah.
off of like
Yeah.
Ryan
Yeah.
Rollison and then in the backfields. I think it was instructional league.
Yeah.
That would be, or maybe the alternate training complex. It's all blends together back then, but that 118-mile-an-hour home run, like he'd have to do something that everybody is like putting the clips out and whatever. Because again, even the data is scarce. In terms of racking up statistics, I could find you so many prospects that hit 400 in the complex or rookie league and then flopped and low A, because you're facing guys in the complex league that are working on pitches. Some of them are just trying to establish their fastball. Some of them are just experimenting with a changeup. So if you have a calm, patient approach and you really just hunt fastballs, a lot of guys can have success there. I think when you look at the international free agent classes too of previous years, I think some of it has to do with what Luis Rodriguez got. And I know people are probably looking at the signing bonuses and looking at that kind of thing. And obviously you're like, oh, well, if they're willing to give this guy this much money, he's got to be pretty good. All I always think about is the Marlins, forking up a ton of money to go get somebody like Victor Mesa. And
Yeah.
that guy's not even really performed above high A. He got demoted to high A last year. The Marlins gave up $5 million for him, and his younger brother, the throw-in, is the better piece. So sometimes you can't base it on that. International free agency is a crapshoot for teams. And it's even more of a crapshoot for us. And that's why I really like to see at least a little bit in low A. You can still get in, I think, early, even after seeing them play in low A. And I think that's part of the issue too. People saw what happened with Dominguez, and I think everybody's trying to get in now before they even reach full season ball. But I don't think you have to do that. I still think that there's places to get in with certain players at the right price points where you can actually sneak up and grab a good talent. That's something that, I think also you look at performances, ups and downs, the roller coasters of a player's season and career through the minor leagues. That also presents an opportunity. And we saw that with JJ Bleday. Bleday, his price fluctuated a little bit, honestly, not as much as some may think. He had a really rough year in AA this year for the Marlins, but of course he was the number 4 overall pick just a couple years ago. We didn't get to see him in the 2020 season because there was no season. We saw him briefly in 2019, but they sent him straight to high A. So you don't really, put too much stock into any struggles there. And he was fine, but really struggled in AA. His price dropped a little bit, didn't totally let the air out, but now he's in the Arizona Fall League, has a new look swing, and has been unbelievable. I'll get into some of the stats there, but how often do we see these kind of roller coasters with players where does the price often fluctuate as much as the public perception does? Because I see Marlins fans freaking out about Bleday the entirety of the season, but it didn't seem like the price fluctuated that much. Kendall, do you have any thoughts on the Bleday price over the last 6 months, let's say, and is it any cheaper still now than it was at the peak of his struggles during the season?
So I'm really high on Bleday. I have been since he was at Vanderbilt, and I'm also an avid fantasy baseballer with deep prospect leagues. And so I got JJ Bleday in almost every first year player draft that I was in. And then all of a sudden it just started falling apart this past year. And I was in the mode of like, I don't know what to do with this because I was so high on him, which is the reason I say that is because when you look at the price points, when they weren't exactly falling quite as far as maybe we expected them to do, I think it's because he had so much initial hype and there's so much trust coming out of a trusted Vanderbilt system. And we've seen how good he can be. I think people were honestly giving themselves more time with Bleday before they got off the train, and to Bleday's favor, he's figured it out.
Yep.
I mean, you sent us that tweet today, and the guy rocketed, that fastball up. I mean, it was just beautiful in the All-Star game, like greatest stage, for the Arizona Fall League. And so Bleday is just, I'm super happy that the guy is turning it around.
Yeah.
But honestly, I think his price is really where it should be. I don't know if it's a buy, but it's not a sell either.
No.
It's a hold because he's finally figuring it out and he's got room to grow from here.
Well, I like that point there because as I get over to T here, as somebody who wasn't really monitoring the Blade market that much, mostly because I just cover the Marlins, and I don't know. I just didn't really want to invest in prospects.
Another Marlin.
Yeah, I just don't really want to do it, especially with the way Marlins had developed hitting prospects. It's more so just because I enjoy diving into the other systems, and I don't really like investing in the team I'm covering. But now that I'm not really specific with the Marlins and I'm more general, I wanted to start to get into it. So I see Blade swing changes. I see the data too, which is telling me that Blade, 4 of the 5 hardest balls he hit all year. That dates back to game 1 of the Double A season to now the Arizona Fall League. Remember, he played, well, I don't know exactly what the numbers are, but probably quadruple the games almost in Double A. But he has already hit 4 of his 5 hardest hit balls of the season in this Arizona Fall League in a fraction of the plate appearances. So obviously he figured something out. And even if you want to say, maybe not quite the pitching competition, at times it is. But even if you want to slight the competition, he's impacting the ball differently. And we saw that with the home run to dead center. This is very real. It doesn't really, to me, seem like a flash in the pan. I very much believe in what he's done. So I want to go in and now buy and put my money where my mouth is. But now I'm kind of hearing, wait, it's kind of where it should be. I could buy it if I feel really, really good, but I shouldn't mistake myself, right, T, and think, oh, I'm still getting it for 60 cents on the dollar. These college established bats, oftentimes, as Kendall kind of mentioned, they are a little bit more impervious to volatility, right? Is that something that you've kind of seen too?
Yeah, I think so. I'm going to disagree though and say that he's a holder. He's not a buy right now. I personally went in on him just today. I went and bought of Blade cards. I think I bought about 30 of them. Some second year cards, some interesting cards like a auto that was out of a kind of a Topps Heritage, their minor league box that was out of 10, a throwback of a Bowman card that was out of 5. Just some interesting second year cards, third year cards that were, obviously not the ones that everyone's hunting, but for $90 for 30 cards, I'm in on that. Like I'll go hunt those lots where I can find, like, you find them on eBay all the time. You find like 10 chromes and 30 paper firsts for $100 or whatever. I'm going to snatch those. Like, I'm not afraid to kind of spread my money out there where I'm $3, $4, $5 in on every card that I own, because I know that's where, especially if he gets down the road and all the stuff that's seemingly coming out about him and about his swing changes and the way that his exit velo is improved and all the stuff that you're talking about, if that holds true, then like you're buying in at a fraction of what it potentially could be. So maybe it's not rush out and go buy a bunch of his PSA 10 Bowman, like his first autos, but hunt a little bit and find those cards that are really on the cheaper end that have a ton of room to grow if he does turn out to be a superstar. Just like if you had bought like 50 of Wander's paper firsts, a long time ago, you're doing great. So, and obviously Blade will probably never be Wander Franco or anything close, but I'm just saying, like, buy cheap lots where you're spread out, where you're looking at $3, $4, $5, $6 a card, and give yourself tons of room to grow. And you may be surprised at what it turns into in a couple of years.
So to piggyback off of that a little bit, before we move on to the next topic, what's the big gain there? We've kind of established, right, that established college bat, the price isn't going to fluctuate or be as volatile as some of the other prospects in this world. And so that's why Blade's price has remained relatively stagnant compared to most players that would have hit as poorly as he hit for most of the year. We still think that there could be some room, but he's not a discounted buy relative to where you might think he is. Why is it better to go after that 30 card lot if we're talking about value wise instead of buying that PSA 10 auto? What's the advantage there? Or is that just a personal preference kind of in terms of just being a bit more careful?
Well, yeah, I mean, I guess if you want to just compare apples to apples, like, yes, say his auto would say you went out and bought 30 Chrome first for $5 a piece. You're $150 into them. You turn around and you buy one Bowman Chrome PSA 10 for $150. Those Bowman Chrome first can easily rise to, $10, $12, $15. And what you're going to see, I don't think you're going to see 2 to 3x on a Bowman Chrome first. I mean, I think there's potential there. And plus it's a lot easier from, kind of my vantage point and what I see and what the card market does, to hop on Twitter and go sell like 4 or 5 Bowman Chrome first for $10 than it is to maybe throw a $450, Bowman Chrome first auto out there, and get anybody to bite. So maybe you're looking at the potential for greater return, but also probably an easier cash out, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, that makes sense.
So the market's naturally
It's
going
more
to
of a
shrink.
liquid
once the
situation.
once the price goes up, the market shrinks naturally. But then if you got a guy that turns into a superstar and you're like, wow, I can get a Chrome first for $20, I'll take it. Just like I'm buying every Bobby Witt Chrome first for $20, I can get my hands on. Because those have the potential to go to $30, $40 real quick.
It makes sense. Basically, you're saying in those lower ranges, when players really start to get going, there's more of that double, triple potential. Whereas you're kind of capped at a certain point with the more expensive cards. You have to really hit that elite echelon, or it's only going to grow kind of marginally until it really pops, right? And I mean, Blade is on his way to starting to get himself on that radar if he can start to replicate some of these numbers in AA or AAA, as I presume he'll probably start there next year. 325, 434, 602 slash line in 20 games, 5 homers and 22 driven in for Blade in the fall league. So really good out there. And there is a lot of talent.
Game, right?
Sorry?
MVP of the All-Star game, right?
Yep. MVP of the All-Star game. And I actually got a text. The last thing I'll say on Blade before we move on to Kelnick and then our personal collections. I got a text from a catcher who's out in the Arizona Fall League, and he shot me a message. All he said, we weren't even talking. And I get a text out of the blue. He just says, yeah, Blade figured it out, or something along the lines of Blade put it together. And I was like, if you're saying that, if the guy that's calling the game, calling the pitches for him is back there saying that, he was on the other team and played against him already. And that's what he came away with. He said the pitches that we were calling, because he faced him during the AA season too, the pitches that we were calling to beat him during the regular season, he was squaring up now.
He's getting into.
And that's a guy that, if he's saying that, he's probably the best person to ask there. Yeah, obviously was saying Nelson Velasquez can't stop hitting either. So there's a lot of guys that are raking out there. But a guy that's finished the season pretty well, and I've been really curious for your thoughts on this. I pulled this card. I was excited about it. It took like 2 months to come in. I probably would have sold it immediately when the Mariners were making their run a little bit. I know that Kelnick wasn't on top of his game, but did start to break out of it a little bit towards the end there. The card has gone down in value since the Mariners missed the playoffs, and people are kind of looking back, I think, on the season numbers and saying, oh, well, he hit 181 with a 615 OPS, and I'm a little nervous. The redemption was selling for about 800. Now we're looking at this card. Last time I checked, anywhere around $400 to $500 depending on the auction. Not bad, but at this point, I feel like I should hold on to it because I do believe in Kelnick as a hitter. These Topps Chrome rookie autos are a little bit different, but I think they're really cool, and I really liked them in this year's set. What are you guys seeing first? Let's kind of start with the product itself, Kendall. With the product here, I really like these Topps auto rookies. I think they came out really cool. I've been trying to buy some more boxes when I can, even though I've always been more of a Bowman guy. And it's obviously great to have an auto of a guy's first major league card. What do you think of the product in general? And then is this a good hold for Kelnick here, or could I invest that money somewhere better, even if Kelnick's value could go up?
Well, there's a lot of caveats to this. First, you've got what team's he on. Second, you've got who is he? What's his sample size? Then you've got the card. You've got the redemption. Then you've got the rookie, not the first. Then you've also got the Topps, not the Bowman. So there's just a lot of different variables to this card, which makes this an intriguing discussion item. But with Kelnick, I'll be candid, about 40% of my personal collection is in Kelnick.
No, it's good. I mean, so people can know if when you're saying buy, everybody should buy it right now.
No. So I've been perplexed by Kelnick as well, and I was really upset most of this season. But I really love gamers, and I think that their value can create hype, even if their skills are not as quite as good as other players, because people will gravitate towards, that's my guy. He's my Mariner. I'm going to get that card. With the Topps series, your Topps question, I'm a Bowman guy through and through. If Topps is on the shelf at Walmart and I'm needing a rip, I'm probably still passing it right now. Like for instance, my Walmart down the street has the Topps series, the newest series, and I literally left it on the shelf.
Wow.
And that's just because I've ripped so much Topps in my past, because I thought that was where the money was at. And there's just not a lot of investment power in Topps for the regular card. Now, your card specifically, that's a little bit different. You know, there with the numbering and with the auto and with the Kelnick and the color, I think you're set to hold there, which is my advice as well. I would hold and sell, because Jared Kelnick's value is going to go up in the spring with the Rodriguez talk, with the Mariners really pushing towards the next generation of players.
They're buying.
Whether Kelnick is going to be an MVP or not I don't think that's part of this exact discussion, but I do think the Mariners are an exciting team. They're going to be a hyped team this year. They're going to have a lot of value outside of only their initial market, which is another thing in cards. You know, like if it's like, for instance, my Rangers players, nobody wants them except for me, but everybody wants Kelnick and Julio right now.
Yeah.
So
they are transcendent. And I think that's a really important point. And one more like clarification, you're talking about the value of product. Obviously, when you have the Wander Franco that's going to come out, and that Topps rookie auto is going to be worth a ton. And obviously this Kelnick card's worth a ton, and there's Brian Hayes and a lot of the other players that are going for a bunch. But when you talk about that, you're referencing like the base chrome versus the base chrome Bowman versus the Topps chrome Bowman, right? That the base card that you're getting out of the box that you purchase is going to be worth more, generally speaking, right? I mean, if you hit big on Topps, it's still worth a ton, but the base of what you're more likely to get is generally just worth less with Topps, is what you're saying.
Yeah, people want the generic Bowman more than they want the generic Topps.
It's fair.
And the only reason that I can tell behind that is the Bowman looks like a more prestigious product.
That's why I love this new chrome. I think it looks really good, but
yeah, it does.
I think
you guys are selling Topps chrome short.
I agree. I'm between both of you, but I want to hear T's take on this.
I mean, I just go back and look at like the like Shohei Ohtani Topps chrome. Like go back and look at like those cards right now that are worth like just an insane amount of money. Topps chrome is gonna always be one of the kind of the standard bearers in the hobby, in my opinion. Topps chrome, they produce beautiful parallels. I love the color that they have. I just think that if you were to compare a Topps chrome rookie and a Bowman chrome rookie, I don't think you're going to see a whole lot of variation in price point. Now, what obviously Bowman has that Topps doesn't are the first, and that's what differentiates the product, in my opinion. But Topps chrome rookies and Bowman chrome rookies, in my opinion, are comparable. I love Topps chrome, and I would sell that Kelnick.
Right now.
Yeah, I don't like the thought of him even of ever being an MVP. Like that, is that even a question? Like the guy was garbage this year.
He was good the last
month.
Month. You're being harsh. He was good the last month.
Okay, the last month. Congrats. But I just don't see him.
He was second, I think, in rookies and home runs in September.
Yeah, September 248, 338, 524 slash line, 7 jacks. and a 135 WRC plus. But
Yeah,
obviously,
I've had a lot of years where I had good months, and I'm still like a career 230 hitter. So like, maybe even lower. I don't even know if I got above the Mendoza line, but I don't think, like, I'm not sold on Kellenic being this long-term superstar like you guys are. I think if you're sitting on $500 worth of Kellenic, give me $500 in somebody else. That's my take on this specific card.
So to kind of go a little bit further on that, when you look at this card and what it's going for, like, I agree. I think the expectation on Kellenic could be a little bit more tempered, though I still think a lot of people are very high on him, and we'll have to just wait and see. The kid has a good feel to hit, but he definitely went through some adjustments with his swing throughout the year. Seemed to really be that rookie that wanted to make a difference down the stretch, was definitely aligning with the fans more, being outspoken, and that's all good things too. And I think started to get more comfortable. But at the same time, again, if he's a 270 hitter with 30 jacks, that's great. But I don't know if that's fulfilling this crazy ceiling that a lot of people had for him, because a lot of people were talking about him as the second best hitter in the minor leagues going into when he was called up behind Wander Franco. I mean, a lot of people were saying he was right there with him in terms of his ability to hit. And there's a good chance he could be there. But if I sell this card, and let's say for round numbers, I have $400 to spend, would I be able to buy a Ke'Bryan Hayes card that's basically the same thing, a Topps Chrome Auto? Like, it would be right around that same price point, right? And at that point, I'd probably rather have Hayes.
Would you take a Brennan Davis PSA 10 Bowman Chrome first auto?
That's true too. I could do that. I mean, and I'm maybe taking in a bit more risk, but I'm also way more, I guess, have way more potential in earnings at that point, because he's still in the minor leagues. Yeah, I'd probably rather have a Brennan Davis at that point. I have so much of him. But I was even looking at like a major league comp, Ke'Bryan Hayes, who's already shown a ton up there. I wonder why his isn't quite going for as much. I know that the Pirates are further off from contending. I know that Ke'Bryan wasn't quite lighting the world on fire the way he did in his short stint in 2020, but he was also coming off of a long injury and really just need to get the ball in the air more. He's a dynamic player that's really exciting. And it's interesting to see how the hype on Kellenic has kind of boosted this card so much. And another guy that still has seemed to be surviving the fluctuations of the market a little bit, right? I mean, how much has his card let out some air versus where it was going into this year, going into his call up? Have we really seen the price fluctuate that much?
Not as much as it probably could have, or could have, if he was a different player.
I think that's
another like huge thing that we're not talking about here is this guy will go down in history, whether he's good or not, based on the Mets made a ridiculous trade. He's going to go down as being the guy that Robinson Cano got traded for. So I think that's going to also be part of this as well. Like, whether he's a superstar or not, he's going to be the guy that the Mets got for Robbie.
Yeah, and Edwin Diaz and the mess there. And I think a lot of people are looking at some of the struggles that the Mets had and how much they could have used Jared Kelenic, but they've got some hitters. And I always think that it is funny how much that trade gets referenced. And there is a little bit of that. Again, we always talk about the psychology of it as well. But we've been targeting some lesser prominent names as of late. And one of the names that I know all of us have been looking into that we really like was a guy that is a former farmhand of Seattle and actually got traded over to Tampa, which anytime the Rays target a prospect later in their minor league career, it has been good news for that prospect and his long-term outlook. See Randy Arozarena. And I can give you a ton of other examples of even relievers and starting pitchers and guys that the Rays specifically targeted and got. Austin Shenton is a guy that they specifically targeted. I was a big fan of his when he was with Seattle. Now he goes over to Tampa, and he's not far away from the big leagues, yet we're seeing his card still go for pennies. He's one of the guys that really checks a lot of the boxes of what we look for in a prospect, just inside of our top 100 list at justbaseball.com, or top 100 prospects, and great bat to ball skills and has some sneaky power too. You've been buying him up, T. Talk a little bit about why you feel so good about him, and also what your approach has been to buying this guy up, as a very cheap prospect relative to his performance?
My approach has been to buy everything I can get my hands on. And so I went kind of on a buying spree this weekend and bought two greens out of 99, a blue out of 150, just a base auto. And I think I spent a total of $110. So I love the position that I have in Shenton. And I think my question to you, Aram, on Shenton, as I look at his numbers and I kind of think about like what he's showing, I'm looking closely at Alec Thomas's numbers, and those two match up really well. We got Thomas inside our top 40, I believe, in terms of the prospect list. Is that a fair? I mean, I think Thomas is in AAA and Shenton still was in double or high A. I can't remember exactly. Shenton's a little bit older. I think he's a couple years older than Alec. Kind of tell me if I'm wrong in thinking that they're similar players and Alec is going for about double what Shenton's going right now in the market.
Yeah, I think with the way they hit and their approach is pretty similar. And I think Alec Thomas, we talk about how we like gamers. Thomas is a gamer. He's a really good athlete too. So he's going to be a bit more dynamic. And that's my only concern with Shenton is that, he's really got to hit, but I really think he can hit. So at that point, I believe in the bat. I think the way their offensive profiles are very, very similar. The difference with Alec Thomas is he's a speedster, at least an above average runner. He's got the ability to stick in center field. I think he's a bit more dynamic. He's going to swipe some bags. He's going to just do some things that I think are a bit more exciting to watch. But in terms of both of these guys and the way they hit, I think they're both really similar in their high contact rates, in the sneaky power. And I do think that you should have Alec Thomas being worth more just because of his more exciting, I guess, nature of the way he plays. But I do think that it is crazy how far apart they are, given Austin Shenton's offensive ability. And I think a really just visually appealing swing, a guy that really is as clean and advanced of an approach as you're going to find. Thomas is a high school guy that really just hit the ground running. But when I look at Austin Shenton's numbers, the guy doesn't miss fastballs. I mean, absolutely destroyed fastballs to an 1131 OPS. He's tough to beat on breaking balls. He spoils pitches. Like, that's a guy that I'm very confident is going to be a solid big leaguer. And at that point, for how low he is price wise, I think he's a really great buy. Alec Thomas, though, I think has a higher chance at being that all-star just because of his athleticism. But if Alec Thomas is an all-star, how much more is his card running versus Shenton, who right now is priced at a guy that might not crack the minor league or major leagues, excuse me. Like, that's where I see him priced at. Kendall, your mic is muted, but my question for you is buying a guy as cheap as Alec Thomas, even though the ceiling is not nearly as cheap as Austin Shenton, even though the ceiling isn't nearly as high. We talk about the X return. If Alec Thomas is an all-star, Shenton is a solid regular for the Rays and potentially playing postseason ball. How cheap he is that a good, who's the better buy, I guess? Because I really like both prospects. And I think Alec Thomas is a lock to be a big leaguer, but chances of him being an all-star are kind of similar to maybe Shenton's chances of being an above average regular, which I think both are still pretty high.
Yeah, I think this is tough because I bought them both this week. So I bought them for different reasons, though. I bought Shenton because of his whatever we're called XJB. That's our stat, right?
Our stat,
yeah, XJ,
which we'll get more into. We'll get more into in the future, but about guys that kind of reach our components that we look for in prospects on the baseball prospect side, and of course into the cards. But continue.
So Shenton fit our JB, and he was in the price range that I love. Like under $15 for a Bowman Chrome Auto. Like, yes. But with Thomas, I think the Diamondbacks are in a horrible position.
Yeah.
They are trash. So Thomas is going to come up and get every opportunity to be a great major leaguer. And so
he's big
that
league ready
really
now.
goes in his favor.
Yeah.
What goes in Shenton's favor is he's a Ray.
Yep.
And all the Rays somehow end up being amazing. And
especially
so just
the ones
like you said,
the ones they target specifically, like
Yeah.
that, what the marks that he reaches for us to identify him as a safe prospect and a safe buy. I think there's some commonality. I'm not saying we're the freaking Rays, because I wish
we are
I
the
wish,
Rays.
Yeah, I wish we were the Rays, but I promise there's some sort of crossover as to why Shenton was at the top of our list of this thresholds that we were looking at. And the Rays, were willing to give up some decent pieces to be able to get a little bit more and get Austin Shenton. They obviously have some things that they really like in him too. And I think that's something that, again, we talked about it earlier, how you can't base your investments off of what teams are interested in them. But if you already like somebody, it's a pretty good, I think, affirmation that you're looking in the right direction. Whereas I think the cart came before the horse a little bit with Luis Rodriguez. Is there anybody else that you guys have been looking to buy? I'll get into some of my buys, but I'm interested to hear what you guys are looking at. I know Shenton has been a big one and the big target. I've been unloading a little bit of the Brennan Davises just because I've been so heavy on it, and I'm looking forward to what the next buy is going to be. I'm still surveying some of our options. I've obviously picked up some Shenton, but also I'm waiting to kind of see who's going to be in some of these new checklists, because so many of the prospects we like are unavailable. The second Curtis Mead has a card, I'm going nuts. But who are you guys investing in now, Kendall? We got it from you a little bit. I want to get a little bit more from T, and then back to you on what you're investing in right now. But T, who else have you been buying outside of the Shenton?
Yeah, I mentioned the Blade earlier. Bought a ton of him, and I'm kind of again in this kick, and I mentioned this earlier too, of buying like just chrome first and refractor versions of the first of these up and coming superstars. Like Nick Gonzalez is a guy that I'm just trying to get as much as I possibly can right now, because his prices are still relatively cheap when it comes to buying up some of his refractors. I think you can get him for 20 or 30 bucks. Witt, you can still get his first for 20 bucks. Chrome. I even bought a Torque refractor first for $50 the other day. Just trying to get, I think getting as many of those as you can. And just kind of hoping that, somebody hits real high or real hard, and then you get maybe a couple PSA 10s there. All you need really is one. And then pretty much you paid for everything that you bought at this $20, $30 level. So I am going after, I bought some Adleys as well. Some of these pretty much can't miss guys that are on everyone's radar, and trying to find those Bowman Chrome first and Bowman Chrome, like the refractor versions, and just really trying to buy in bulk.
I'm with you 100%. And that's something I'm excited to start looking at too. And what I was doing during quarantine, and probably not the best investment, still kind of gambling a little bit at that point, but I was just buying Nick Gonzalez spots in every single big break I could find. Any like multi-case break, I was dropping a lot of money just to have the Nick Gonzalez spots. So I didn't hit too big on the autos, but just so many first chromes and first chrome refractor base cards that I'm thrilled with, because I'm so high on him. I think he's going to be a stud at the big league level. I think he's gonna be an all-star, and I've probably got like 100 of them. So at that point, I'm just like, all right, I'll just hold on to them. I wish I had some autos. I have a couple. I wish I was able to pull a few more. It didn't happen, but I'm happy with the amount of base cards I have, and especially because, like you said, odds are a few of them are going to be able to pull back a good grade. Who else are you looking at, Kendall, that you've been scooping up? And we're going to talk about it in the next episode. I want each of us to come with our top 5 buys. I know that we have the criteria that we're all looking for, so we'll have some overlap. So we'll see where some of us are kind of straying a little bit and going off on our own. But to tease that a little bit, who have you been looking into recently to buy?
Yeah, so I said that I've been buying Shenton, and I said Alec Thomas as well. Another guy that we haven't really talked about in a while, because he really struggled in his first appearance in AA, that I bought an auto for because it was stupid cheap today, was Greg Jones,
Yep.
Tampa Bay. And I got his Bowman Chrome first auto for $18. And he had a 60 WRC plus in 2021 AA. That's not good.
No.
But I really like Greg Jones. And I was like, okay, if I'm going to have one auto of Greg Jones, I want it to be $16, especially right now,
Yeah.
And so Greg Jones is a guy that I bought this week. And I have been looking all over the place for Nick Gonzalez as well. And he's a little bit out of my price range right now. That doesn't mean it's not a buy. That just means your boy is not quite a big baller, So
I mean, he's getting up there because people really see it. They see it. But this is a good example of where pick up those Bowman Chrome first then of Nick Gonzalez, and you feel really good about him. Obviously, the general public still feels good about him, but we still think he's going to exceed that. So just because the auto might be out of the price range, you can get a dozen of those base Bowman Chromes, and you'll be reaping the rewards there still too if he's as good as we think he's going to be. The Greg Jones component is a really interesting one because rarely do you get to invest at $18 with that kind of upside. Obviously, there's a ton of volatility, and I think that's why a lot of people are staying away. But the irony in it is that we also have the same collectors, or many of the same collectors, putting a ton of money into teenage international free agents. To me, I've talked to that's the interesting part of it, because this guy's already at AA. I understand he's 20, about to be 24 years old, but every single Rays prospect I've talked to, and this has been a half dozen Rays prospects now, I asked them, who is the most dynamic and just jaw-dropping athlete in the Rays org? None of them even spent half a second thinking about it before they say Greg Jones. Now, that doesn't immediately correlate to success on the baseball field, but we saw what he did to high A pitching. We see what kind of stolen base numbers and superstar plays he can make. He's a switch hitter for power. He's got that kind of turn your head and watch athleticism that you don't see on a baseball field very often. We'll see if he can hit enough, but at $16 to $18, in a lot of occasions, especially if it's a guy I haven't seen much of when it's an international free agent, I'd probably rather go after the Greg Jones buy there because in a lot of ways, you got to ignore the age. He didn't have that many at-bats coming into this year, and he very well could settle into AA. Obviously, I'm a little bit biased because I did talk to him one-on-one, and I did interview him, and I did get to hear him talk about the adjustments that he's making. But I think it's a really important point when we're talking about somebody that's as toolsy as he is, that you're getting in it pretty cheap for some big upside. I'm not saying put $1,000 into it, but why not scoop a couple, right? See, I mean, how often do you roll the dice on some guys like that you can get 3 cards for $48?
Oh, all the time. Yeah, I love rolling the dice. I'm going to go buy some Greg Jones right after we get off this call.
I mean, right? Like you have your safe investments, like you talk about with the Bobby Witt bases and those things, but it's okay to roll in a couple of those high risk, high reward guys in your portfolio as well, right? I mean, how much do you generally put into those guys versus the rest of your portfolio?
Yeah, that's a good question. That's one I'm going to look into that, and I'll come back next. I mean, that'd be a good topic to talk about.
Right. So that's something we can talk about, but generally, you're not going too heavy, but
I'm not going too heavy, but there's nothing wrong with having flyers. I mean, you should diversify.
Every farm system has their flyers. Greg Jones is a flyer to the Rays.
Yeah.
I mean, trust me, like this is a Rays system that plays it safe a lot with the guys that they know they like, but you get a chance. They got a chance at a Greg Jones out of the draft. He fell to them to where they didn't think that he would be there. And they said, screw it. Like this is a guy too much upside to pass on. And sometimes there's guys that are just like that. And one thing I really liked about Greg Jones, to wrap up on him, is he was telling me about, how he was able to get reps in with Taylor Walls defensively and really marveled at watching Wander Franco hit. And guys like that, I'm willing to put a few bucks in when I really hear an interview and I like their makeup too. Obviously, there's a lot more to it than that, but that makes me comfortable enough. Hey, let's roll the dice here and see what happens. And it's always fun to buy in early there because let's be real. If he puts it together, there's no in between. If he puts it together, he's an all-star. If he doesn't, he may not even crack the big leagues.
Who does he comp for you?
That's a great question. That's a great question.
when I just look at him, I have a couple in my head that I'm like, I hope he ends up like bang.
Like, what is that?
No, I want to hear yours. I want to hear yours.
I mean,
you're the professional.
Yeah, people always ask me that on the spot, and I'm like, dude, an 80 grade potential runner that has the ability to hit from both sides, play shortstop, fall back as center field, sneaky power from both sides. Like, there's not that many guys like that.
So, okay, I'll just tell you what I see. So, in my opinion, if he makes a major league roster, his floor is Delino DeShields.
Yeah.
Which at $16, a Delino DeShields card is like, okay,
whatever.
Like,
I'll survive.
Whatever. But I think at his peak, I'm like, man, I could really see, like, maybe not at his peak, but I could see him being a Rajai Davis or somebody like that for a playoff team that he gets onto a roster and he's like, they have him on their super utility. All of a sudden he explodes and all of a sudden his card's worth $50 or $60.
Yeah. He's got the gamer in him too. And the thing is, though, is if he really puts it together offensively, he could be an all-star shortstop. Obviously, it wouldn't be for the Rays. They'd probably move him somewhere else, given that they've got that Franco guy at shortstop. But he's got that kind of dynamic ability that, if he puts it together, who knows what that kind of upside is. But the fallback being that he's got that athleticism that he's going to find his way onto a big league roster, I think.
Yeah, I think he gets traded, honestly, this season, maybe this offseason.
I think he does
because the Rays have so much middle infield that Greg Jones is a guy that didn't show well in AA, and he could be passed to another organization.
And he'll get his chances, though. And that's the thing is
the Alec Thomas and the D-backs, like he'll get his chance.
And that's, I think, really important too. Before we wrap up, any talking points you guys have that we may have missed here that we want to get into?
I do. I want to go back. I want to go back to our first discussion on the Bowman Chrome checklist.
Yes. Thank you.
That was a lot about Luis Rodriguez. And then we kind of mentioned a couple of the other guys, Pineda, Colmenares, Christian Rodriguez. Who am I missing? Victor Acosta, maybe you want to throw in there. Peño, the guy for the Astros.
Peña.
Yeah, Peña. Aram. Those are kind of the bigger names for that specific checklist, just purely from a baseball standpoint. Who's the guy out of those 5 or 6 bigger names that everyone's chasing?
Yeah, it's tough because
they're one
all so young. Like if we're looking at price point, like I'm not really trying to go too much into some of these players because I think they're already so expensive. But from a prospect perspective, 2 guys that I think are safer relative to where they are at, because we talk about the risk of guys that have only played at the complex league. And from what I've seen and from what I've heard from team people that have seen some of these guys a bit more, I do really like the floor relative to where he is on somebody like Carlos Colmenares, not just because he's with the Rays, but I really like his swing. I think he's definitely got the bat to ball skills that you don't really see from a young player. Both of these guys do. And Colmenares is a guy that sweet stroke, sneaky power, good athlete, has the potential to have tools across the board. Someone that I think might even be safer with the bat is Christian Santana of the Tigers. And I'm seeing his name starts to come up more and more. And Santana was a guy that the Tigers had been targeting since he was like out of the womb. Like they had been after this guy basically before he was even eligible to be signed because of how natural hitting has come to him. And I just did a write-up on the Tiger system and really watched more and more of Christian Santana. And I love how easy his swing looks, how the barrel lives through the zone. Like that's a guy that I actually expect to dismantle the complex league if that's where he is again next year. And I'm not going to put too much stock into it, but that's just
which doesn't mean anything.
No, but that's the thing. That's the funny thing is he's an example of like a guy. He's so advanced. He's going to dismantle the complex league, and then we'll see what happens. But I think he's that type of guy that's advanced. That's just going to feast on the competition his age, and the real test will be in low A, where he'll get into full season ball, and we'll get to see him a bit more. But I really like what I've seen relative to the other guys from those two. And I think obviously Christian Santana is a bit cheaper. He doesn't come with as much hype, but I do think that teams value him at a pretty high mark there if the Tigers were looking to make a deal.
That's good stuff. I think a lot of people are looking for that kind of info as they're, this product is only a couple months old. So it's not, it's still breaks are packed full of it. So that kind of insight's really helpful.
Yeah. And
what do you think about Manuel Beltre?
Another guy where it's just like, it's so early. And that's what's really hard about this recent drop is that most of these guys, we've barely seen. But Beltre is another guy that 17 years old, like who knows how he's going to continue to mature. Like I'm okay. He's the type of dude, if I pulled him, I'm holding it because I do like the very basic ground floor things that we've seen. He's 5'9", 155 pounds, if I'm not mistaken. And so it's like, it's so early. He might.
That's actually exactly what he is.
He might grow like 3 inches. I don't even know. I grew a couple inches after I turned 17. Like who knows what's going to happen. And that's what's interesting about this set. So for me personally, I'm just looking at names I'm holding when I do a break. Like when I'm doing this break, if I pull Clementeraz, I'm holding him. And then there's certain names where I'm like, if I pull Luis Rodriguez, he's so high right now. I'm just selling him because I'm like, nothing against you, Luis Rodriguez, but this is crazy. I can definitely go do better things with my money. A Beltre, Santana, those guys aren't going for enough where I'm going to say, oh, I'll just sell it and take the money. I think they're at the point where I'm like, I'm intrigued in these guys. Let's see what happens. But personally, not to say that the product isn't good because I do like a lot of the players and I think it's fun. If I'm pulling some of these guys, I'd rather go invest in someone from a year ago who I've seen a bit more of, whose price might not be that much different. And I think that's the really interesting thing about this set. Yeah.
So I know we never talk about pitchers, and there's a lot of reason for that. But is Po Yu Chin in the top 5 here? Because of the weak checklist.
Pitchers?
Yeah. I have my opinion, but I just am curious about what you would say.
Pitchers, like, I honestly, like, when it comes to pitchers, I'd rather just go huge. So I don't like, that's something I got to turn back on you. It's like, what does a unproven pitcher look like? At what point do pitchers really start to translate into value? Because I was scooping up Grayson Rodriguez's for nothing before this season started, like $30. So what does his price point look like?
I mean, not well. So my answer to that question is no, he's not. He might be a little more proven, a little more less raw than some of these hitters and stuff like that. But he's still a pitcher that you have no idea where his elbow is even going to end up. That's
the problem.
And so, although he, it's weird because like on a non-card perspective, Chin might be a little like higher on the list. In a non-card or in a card perspective, nah, pass on that. So,
yeah.
And I know we're going to eventually get people in our comments on YouTube and everything. It'll be like, oh, you only talk about the Rays and you never talk about pitchers. And there are pitchers worth buying to some degree, but pass on the top 5 of Chin.
Yeah. I mean, and just because the stuff is like, we don't know what it's going to look like. I mean, the fastball is still in the low 90s, if that, and like he got knocked around in A-ball. I mean, it's impressive that he made it to A-ball and they felt good enough, the Pirates, to move him up there. But this isn't somebody that was just letting the world on fire and gassing guys up. Yes, 26 strong innings at the complex. But man, we
at the complex.
We can't be looking at these complex stats. I'm telling you, they don't often end up being, what you think it is. Even guys that have hit 400 in the complex league tail off a little bit. I love Alberto Hernandez, but like, look at what that dude did in the complex league. That guy was a freak in the complex league, or in rookie ball, I should say. So there's a lot of things that go into it, but yeah, I'm not investing in a pitcher that low, especially with how cheap they are. You can go get a stud. I mean, even look at some of the other guys that you can get in terms of pitching prospects, like Jake Eater, who's on the shelf with Tommy John now. Like I would scoop up Jake Eater. He was one of the best pitchers in the minor leagues this past year, and he goes for nothing. And his slider is one of the best breaking balls I thought in the minor leagues. Like those are the types of guys I would love to go target.
Yeah, I got a Lodolo for pretty cheap not too long ago. So
that's another crazy one, man. Like if I'm getting Nick Lodolo for cheap, like he's got incredible command, ridiculous stuff. Like that's a big leaguer. Like we don't know where this guy's going to be with the
go by
Pirates,
Alek Manoah.
Yeah, that's a guy I bought up a lot. I actually just pulled him recently. I cracked open that draft box, which we're going to do another one on here soon. And I pulled a Manoah auto out of 50, and that was pretty sweet. I was pumped about that one.
Good stuff.
Anything else?
Yeah, I would say like my last guy that I'm looking for. You said you like at the very end you wanted me to. What was my last buy?
Yes,
I'm looking at Mayo right now.
See, I love Kobe Mayo, but he's kind of expensive, right?
Yeah.
So what do you think about the get-in price here? Like, what does he compare to? How is he cheaper or more expensive than Luis Rodriguez?
Cheaper.
See, to me, that's nuts. That's nuts. Yeah. Kobe Mayo is a freak show. Like he's 6'5". Yeah. He's got crazy body control, exciting power. And that guy's going for cheaper.
You can get a refractor first auto for around $80.
Dude.
Yeah. There was
Let me buy that.
Buy the Mayo, baby.
I'm really high on Mayo. I love what I've seen from him. His bat to ball skills, like his ability to consistently make contacts, his body control.
Where'd you have him in the Orioles system?
Yes. I think I have him at 6, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe
and that's
7.
not a bad system.
And that's a good system. I mean, there's guys ahead of him that are, some of the top prospects in baseball. When you look at Adley, Grayson,
yeah.
I mean, after the year Jordan Westbrook had Gunnar, I mean, that right there, we just named 5 dudes. This is a really, really good DL Hall still has to be up there.
Valdos's finest.
Yeah, he's great. So you look at that and I'm like, man, I'm interested in Kobe Mayo at that price. And that's why I always think, again, it's not that some of these guys aren't good or won't be good. It's that there's other guys that I think have a better chance of being just as good, if not better, who are cheaper. And we're going to help identify those guys. And Kobe Mayo is somebody that I'll give my full report on next episode with the data behind it, because there's some things to like a lot about Kobe Mayo. And he's a guy that's probably going to crack our top 100 update as well. But that should do it for this week's episode. And remember, you can always just fire away any questions, comments you have in the YouTube comments. We're happy to talk about whatever players you want us to talk about, specific cards that you might be on the fence about investing in, or a little bit more on who we're investing in. We may even slide in a little bit of vintage talk in the next episode as well, because I have some of my vintage collection and a little bit of Hall of Fame talk to tie in with that, because it's going to be an absolute shit show when we have this upcoming Hall of Fame voting with a lot on the line here in real life and in the card world. And I'm excited for that one as well. So we'll be talking a lot about that and what that could mean for the market, with a lot more on the way as well. But that'll do it. Any last words from you, gentlemen?
No, good stuff. Good show. Hit us up in the comments. We would love to just do an entire segment on stuff that you guys are really interested in. So we'd love to hear from you.
Absolutely. And again, remember that they're doing that break. So if you want to get in with us, I'll be in there. I'll be talking to, answering questions during some of the breaks moving forward as well. And I got the Rays, but I might be scooping up another team too. So you better hurry up. But that'll do it for this week's episode. Well, yeah. How many spots are left?
5.
Oh, shoot. I got to hurry up. All right. Only 5 spots left. And that's as of the time we're recording this. You're watching.
So they're gone by the time.
They might be gone. You better hurry up. But they're doing more breaks coming up soon. But that'll do it. And thank you, everybody. Look forward to talking cards with you next week.